IIT Kharagpur and IIT ISM Dhanbad, and such mark institutions. So we welcome you, sir, Mr. Tushar, to start your session.
Thank you, ma'am Sudha, and thank you, Mr. Vinod Shankar, and other members of the esteemed management at AICDSU. It's my pleasure to be addressing the students, your students today, and also the management people on this very crucial subject of venture capital. So I would like to keep things simple. I will not use any over-the-top business jargons or high terminologies. In any case, if I need to use any of these terminologies, then I will explain them. So, in a startup's journey, the first phase is proof of concept (POC), and that is when you develop something which you think of something which can fetch money. And the second stage is MVP, minimum viable product, which means that you have developed something which has a business model which can generate return. And the most crucial part is PMF, product market fit. And product market fit means that not only your product has the capacity to generate money, but you have also thought about customer segmentation, customer research, and you have developed versions of your product. You have developed different pricings of the product. You have a distribution strategy. You have a product strategy, and basically, uh, when we talk about the startup funding space, we talk about all these terms quite loosely, like MVP, PMF, POC, proof of concept, and so on. So let us, today I will be taking you through economic background, how venture capital took center stage as an exciting business option, and why it garners so much media attention. So basically, uh, let me take you through the fact that we are living in times when if you do a job or a business, you earn a certain amount of money. But if you want to earn money by investment, which means putting your money to work for you, then the safest kind of investments are not giving you good return. So if you are keeping your money in a bank in a fixed deposit, you get in India 4.5 to 5% annual return post tax. And in case you are a dollar investor, you put your money in a fixed deposit in a US bank, you get 0.5% per year. And in case you are a euro investor, you get 0.25% per year. In case you are yen, the Japanese currency, then yen has a negative return, which means that if you are keeping your money in a fixed deposit in a Japanese bank, then you will have to pay the bank to keep your money. So we are living in times where there's a lot of money in the hands of financial institutions, in the hands of big investors, and this money is chasing returns. It wants returns, and when it is chasing returns, it means that either the money can be put in a business, you can start a new product or service, or you can invest this money. And when you invest this money, you invest it across asset classes. So what are the asset classes? So the first thing is you invest in a stock market. The stock market investment means shares of listed companies which are being traded on the stock exchange. And this kind of investment has its own risks. And one looks for good rated companies to invest, like in Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange in India. We have Reliance, which is AAA plus rated, and then we have HDFC, which is the bank which has given the best returns. uh, best returns in India, best returns globally as a bank. So no other share of a global bank has given such a good return as HDFC. But these are AAA rated companies, supposed to be the most stable, supposed to be least risky, and the fact of the matter is they don't double overnight. So if you are keeping your money in Reliance shares or HDFC shares, they won't double overnight. But because they pay dividends every year, and because their shares keep on rising slowly, every year you will easily make 10 to 15% kind of average return if you hold the share for long. If you do too much of short term trading, you will make losses also, apart from making profit. So this is the stock market. That is one asset class. The second asset class is commodities. So oil, aluminium, copper, iron, gold, silver, zinc. Uh, they all are traded on commodity exchanges. So you can buy these commodities, or you can sell these commodities on the exchange. You can buy futures and options also. Options are the most riskiest kind of products which are available for betting on commodities and betting in stock markets. Futures are another option which is there. So the second asset class is commodities. The third asset class is real estate. So real estate again goes in cycles. It keeps on rising for many years, then it keeps on falling for many years. In India, it has been falling since 2012. So since 8 to 9 years, it has been falling. To give you a perspective on real estate investment, China has seen excess of 7% GDP growth every year, and a large component of that comes from infrastructure development and specifically real estate. And when you look at a country like India, which is getting 5% growth uh, pre-COVID, and post-COVID things were bad for the economy, but pre-COVID 5 to 6%. Then the missing engine in the GDP growth was real estate, because real estate was falling. So the third asset class is real estate. The fourth asset class nowadays is cryptocurrency. So it is actually not a currency, because it cannot be used anywhere. It is a number on the screen on which so many institutions and people have bet so much of money that the total value of outstanding bitcoins, there are 18.5 million bitcoins outstanding which are traded every day. The total value of outstanding bitcoins is $2.5 trillion. That's about the GDP of India, the gross domestic product of a country like India for the entire year. So betting has taken so much form that cryptocurrencies, they rise 30% in a day, sometimes they fall 40% in a day, because they are very volatile. And they are very volatile because they don't have any intrinsic value. Its technology, which is blockchain, can be used. It has a variety of use cases, but as a currency, cryptocurrency does not have any inherent value. Just like gold has inherent value, you can make jewelry. Oil has, you can use it in your cars and bikes. Aluminium, copper, iron, they all have intrinsic value. uh, Stock markets has listed shares. Shares are there, shares of companies. These companies have intrinsic value. So you can also bet in currencies. So you can bet on dollar, that the dollar value will fall or rise. And but these are currencies which are backed by governments. But crypto is not backed by any government. It is a free float kind of number, and it is also counted as an asset class in today's times. So why was crypto created? uh, so the alternative to the US dollar used to be gold. So the moment the US economy started performing badly, people used to rush and buy gold as a safety hedge. But the problem with gold is that the gold mines are not evenly scattered throughout the world countries. Some countries have more gold mines, some countries have less gold mines. So the Western world, they thought that gold is an asset class which is beyond our control because a lot of gold mines are in Africa. So the US created cryptocurrency as an alternative to dollar. So, if the US economy performs badly, they thought, why should people invest money in gold? So, we will give them a new asset to play with, and that also play with digitally through the internet, and that is cryptocurrency. Now, you would be thinking you have forex, commodities, you have real estate, you have stock markets. So, from where does venture capital come in? So there is a risk return profile of each asset class. So if you are betting on a good rated company, your risk is less, your reward is also less. But if you are betting in a small cap company, penny stocks, risk is very high. A 1 rupee stock can become 10 paisa stock in no time, but it can also double from 1 rupees to 2 rupees. So the risk is high, reward is high. So venture capital is an asset class where you put money in the shares of companies which are unlisted, which are not traded on the stock exchange. And because these shares are not traded on the stock exchange, it is not possible to easily sell your shares. If you invest in a startup, you take shares of that startup, you cannot exit whenever you want to because there is no liquid market for those shares. So the risk is high. The return, 7 out of 10 startups which are there today will close down. So, I was talking to a Startup India person 1.5, 2 years back. There were 28,000 startups registered under Startup India 2 years back. Today it is above 50,000. So 22,000 startups have been created in 2 years. So this mania of trying a new business, trying a new business model, and opening a startup has caught up. The world is enthralled by it. But the fact of the matter is that 7 of the 10 startups will close down. So any investor who is putting his money has to be mindful of the fact that there is a 70% chance that his money will become zero. Because when a startup closes down, it has very few assets, it has a lot of liabilities, and a lot of unpaid dues. So basically, the equity investor, the main investor in the company, does not get too much. He will hardly get anything. So what the investors have done is they invest by a portfolio approach. The portfolio approach means that they will invest in 10 companies, 7 will close down, while one will keep on working normally, it won't grow too much. But 2 out of the 10, maybe 1 or 2 out of the 10 will grow so much, it will become a unicorn. Unicorn means any startup with more than $1 billion value. So they feel that we invest in 10 companies, one or two, even if one or two become huge, then they will get a 300%, 300 times, 400 times kind of return. So to give you an example, this year, India is the hottest startup market in the world. We are seeing every week 2 to 4 startups becoming unicorns, which means growing beyond $1 billion value. $1 billion is 7,500 crores. And every day you open the media, 1 or 2 companies or 3, 4 companies are becoming unicorns. They are getting huge investments, at a valuation which is more than $1 billion. And the investors are happily pushing money towards these startups. There is a research which happened, which said that there is a 54% average return which a portfolio startup a portfolio of startups generates. So this 54% is a very healthy figure, because think of it. You invest in fixed deposit in a bank, you get 5%. And here, after putting your money in startup for 3 years, 5 years, or 8 years, you are getting every year 54% return. So, which kind of asset class can generate this kind of return? There is no other asset class, and that is the beauty of venture capital. Between fear and greed, risk and reward, lies venture capital. Uh, Globally, from a matter of macroeconomic perspective, what is happening is that most of the products and services which human beings need have already been invented 20, 30 years back. Furniture, clothes, housing, shoes, uh, the basic things which people need. Nowadays is a time of creating such new products and services which can be later on sold to the customers, and creating a market for these new things. And one thing which decides whether the new things which we create for customers will sell or not is customer stickiness. Customer stickiness means till how long will the customer use it every day. And the biggest invention for customer stickiness is the smartphone. The smartphone was created by Steve Jobs of Apple, 2007, and today it is ubiquitous. Uh, Everybody uses smartphones, and there is so much of artificial intelligence and machine learning which is being used by apps on the smartphone, that you will not be able to leave the smartphone if you take it on your hand. It will keep on showing you such videos, such data, then it will keep on showing you such advertisements, that because Google, Facebook, Amazon, they all are working on data, on the basis of data they collect from their customers. And Google has mapped each person who uses Google on 700 parameters. Where do they live? Where do they travel? What do they like? So if you are a firm believer, you have dog as a pet. So if you go to YouTube or you go to any website, they will keep on showing you videos related to dogs. And that generates customer stickiness, because they are able to predict what you will like. And apart from uh, generating money through regular products and services, because these companies are using artificial intelligence and machine learning, using the huge amount of data they have captured, so they are able to create new ways to get money from you. So one of the most popular ways of getting money from the customers which are using the app is to first offer them something for free. And once you take something for free, then they will immediately uh, get you in their database, and then offer you something very premium. So, although the cost of acquisition of such a customer is high, because they are offering you the first thing for free, but they are making it up by subsequently selling you a premium thing. And that is one customer acquisition strategy which has proved to be very successful. So just imagine you are using Amazon or you are using NetMeds, or you're using Big Basket or Zomato, and in the first time you use it, they practically give it to you for free. You have a discount, you have a cashback, and then you have special codes which give you a free. But the moment you become used to using that app, then they will make it their money. So this strategy has meant that startups are generating uh, revenues not in the initial years, but once they start to monetize their data which they have in hand of customers, and they start to monetize it later. So, what has happened is that initially, because they are not monetizing their business initially, it requires a good amount of investor money in the initial years, and the company is in losses. And a lot of these unicorns which you see nowadays, they are actually making losses, and many have hardly any business. So look at Cred. Cred was started by Kunal Shah, and it has uh, hardly any revenue, but it is valued at more than $1 billion, because the investors feel that once Cred becomes an established brand in the minds of customers, then it will start generating good amount of money. So this is about venture capital. This is about asset classes. This is about why startup funding is so important. Uh, now I can go on and on about macroeconomics, about venture capital, about what these companies are doing nowadays. But there is already so much of awareness among students nowadays that I don't need to stress too much upon the value of venture capital. So I will now take you through a presentation. The presentation is about how to raise funds, and it will guide you on which all factors to keep in mind when you are raising funds for your startup. And I'm sharing my LinkedIn profile on chat. Please feel free and approach me on LinkedIn. So I'll just share the screen. Just a minute. Yeah. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh,
Are you
so,
able to see the screen now?
yeah. 1 second. Yeah, everyone is able to see now.
Okay, sure. So, how to raise funds? See, uh, an investor is making a financial decision when he's putting his money into a company, which means that he's very much bothered about how this money will come back to him with a return. And the fund guys, the venture capital fund guys, see, they raise money which they invest from high net worth individuals, HNIs, or angel investors, or they raise money from family offices or endowment funds, which is university alumni money, or pension funds, which is provident fund money, and they raise $100 million, $50 million, or maybe even less, $5 to $10 million, or even more, $500 million. So they promise a return to the person from which they are taking the money, that we will return your money in 5 to 8 years with a internal rate of return IRR of 20 to 25% every year, and they get paid because of their knowledge, capacity, skill of generating a return with that money. So naturally, they have somebody else's money, they have to return it. If in the first fund they don't return that money, then naturally, in the follow on funds which they will create, nobody will give them their money. and their career is online. So because they have to really calculate a lot while giving you their money, so there is a way they work to analyze whether to put money in a particular startup or not. And they have an investment thesis which they put on their website also, which means that they will invest in what stage of the company: seed stage, pre-series A, series A, series B, or at the time when MVP has been created, or at the time when PMF has been created. So they have a stage at which they will put their money. The second is the ticket size. They will put 2 crores, 5 crores, $5 million, $10 million, and so on. Third thing is the sectors in which they will put their money. So they have analysts who are specialists of a particular sector. So somebody understands education technology, somebody understands financial technology, fintech, edtech, somebody understands consumer B2B, B2C. B2C is business to consumer, B2B is business to business, wholesale. And D2C is direct to consumer, which is the hottest new trend in India since the last 4 years, is direct to consumer, D2C. It's become a $4 billion market in 4 years. And space tech, defense tech, agri tech, agriculture. So then, they also specify the sector in their investment thesis. Then they specify uh, that they have things like we will not invest in a single founder company, because a single founder means the whole risk is on one person. So if the one person is not available, the company will go down. So they will always say at least have three co-founders or two co-founders. Then they have things like we will invest only companies which are catering to the India market. So when they sold their market, they marketed themselves to HNIs from which they raised money. So the HNI said, they said we will capture the huge growth potential of the Indian market. So naturally, they have raised funds on the basis of Indian market. So naturally, in their investment thesis, they will also have a clause saying that we will prefer companies which are focusing on the India market. And so this all forms a thesis, and they invest around their thesis, and their thesis is available on their websites also, on each fund's websites. Now, this is my corporate website, consultancy.com. You can go there, watch my videos. You can also see a lot of data over there. This is my LinkedIn. Happy to connect on LinkedIn. This is about me, which briefly ma'am discussed. So I am actually did my executive education from Harvard Business School, uh, and did my MBA finance from University of Delhi, and my textile engineering from Birla College, TIT Bhiwani. And I'm a venture advisor with Loyal VC. It's a INSEAD-led Canadian VC fund, having a core portfolio of over 160 investments in 35 countries. I've delivered more than 150 talks in the last 1 year. You can check on YouTube by searching my name, or on Venture Capital TV website. I have a page where all my videos are. Now, what is a pitch deck? It's a 15 to 16 slide document which you present to the investor when you take your case to them. And a pitch deck, what all it contains is basically what the investor wants to see. So I'll just tell you what the investor wants to see. The first thing the investor wants is, what is the problem statement? The problem statement means that human beings must be facing a particular problem which you are trying to solve. And because you are trying to solve a problem faced by human beings, it will have a market, it will have customers. Do remember, 65% of the startups closed down because they did not find a market for their product. Customers refuse to pay for the product. So till how long can you sell your product for free? End of the day, if the customer is not willing to pay for your product, and sometimes tech guys, they are so passionate, they create something unique, but if the customers of that kind of product is himself not a techie, they will not appreciate it. So you have to your invention should be focused on the customer's needs. For example, Uber solved the taxi problem. Big Basket and Grofers solved the grocery problem, delivering of grocery at home. Zomato and Swiggy solved the food problem, delivering your food at where you are sitting. Amazon and Flipkart. Amazon started in 94. Till 2014, it was making losses, 20 years. But the stock of Amazon always kept on going up and up because it was capturing new markets, and because its business was growing, it was investing whatever money it was making into new businesses. So its market share kept on growing. So that's why the stock kept on growing in spite of losses. So this is the problem statement, and then the solution, then the team behind. I will cover all these points one by one: market size and opportunity, product, business model, traction, competitor analysis, competitive advantages, financial projections, the ask, use of funds, and future roadmap. So this is the problem statement, that which is the problems. What is the problem you are trying to solve? Uh, don't make it complicated. You have to find a simple problem. So shuttle is a service. Now office goers had to use their own cars because they didn't want to go to DTC, Delhi Transport Company. In many cases in Delhi. So shuttle said we will bring AC buses for morning and evening office commute, and it will have Wi-Fi, and it will be decently priced, and it will be available near your home. So they identified a problem which was very much existing on the ground. Solution was simple, that have your own buses, offer them for 300 rupees, 200 rupees a trip, and good service and timely service, and that's why it took off. Sad situation is after COVID, shuttle is now closing down, but basically their product was very much, and then they started using technology. They started using GPS to better utilize their vehicles, to better utilize their drivers, and a lot of innovation can be built in once you have started creating the product. A lot of innovation can be built in. Now the team behind is the most important aspect of an investor's investment decision. End of the day, they are betting money on people, and so the team behind is very important. You have to have a balanced team. There should be a product guy, a technology guy, marketing guy. Uh, so there is a book which came recently which said that generalists rule the world. That today you don't have to be a specialist, you have to be a generalist. So you should know a bit about everything. You should know a bit about what your marketing department does, how it does, what your tech department, which tech they are using, uh, how do they use that tech. Little bit about everything, about the HR, human resource, that what is their process by which they recruit, why do they do certain things. Right? So so the team behind should have 2 to 3 co-founders, a balanced team. It is not necessary that all the people in the team are founders or co-founders. They can be on job, they might be having ESOPs, employee stock option plans, and but always keep in mind that the investor is betting money on the quality of the team, on the people he talks to and sees. Even if the business model is faulty or the product is not good, a good team will always pivot the business model and create a better product. But a bad team will forever be stuck with the wrong product. So that is the importance of a team. Market size and opportunity. If you are operating in a market which has very small size, so naturally your revenue won't increase too much, even after putting in investor money. So that is the importance of market size. You have to operate in a market which is a huge market. Like in India, the consumer market is huge. Indian consumption is $11 trillion. The GDP is $2.7 trillion, but in rupee terms, the consumption is $11 trillion. So we are a huge consumer market, and the success of direct to consumer companies D2C, like Mama Earth, Boat headphones, uh, it is a it is a clear proof of the huge consumption which is there in this country. And that's why consumer B2B and consumer B2C companies, they rise a lot and they make good money for the investors. Next is, your product might be good, but how do you make money from the product? So that is the business model. Do you have a commission based model? Do you have if you are a software as a service company, SaaS company? So Indian SaaS company Freshworks yesterday listed on Nasdaq at a valuation of $10 billion. So it's a monthly or a yearly subscription, or what are the sales channels you have? Direct sales, wholesale. So business model is comes right after product. And once see, when you are showing the product to the investor, you can have videos, you can do a live demo, you can have pictures, and just give the feel of the product to uh, the investor. And business model comes very close to the product, because no matter how good your product is, end of the day it has to make money, and that is where the investor will be attracted. Traction means what is the business you are already doing: revenue growth, customer growth, vendor partners growth. Right now, what is the turnover you are doing? What is the operating profit, EBITDA, EBITDA, earning before interest, depreciation, taxation, and amortization, which is called operating profit. What is the operating profit you are doing? What is the net profit you are doing? So a lot of time companies come to me, they say that, sir, we are right now our revenue is very small, but we are looking at funds at 10 crore valuation or 15, 20 crore valuation. See, if your turnover is in thousands, 50,000, 60,000, the maximum valuation you can get is 2 crore, 3, 4 crores. It's it'll be very difficult to get more valuation. But if your turnover is like 40 lakhs a year, 50 lakhs in 1 year, like 4 lakhs a month, then you can ask for 8 crore valuation, 10 crore valuation. You can ask for more valuation. And definitely, if you are raising 3 crore rupees at 10 crore valuation by diluting 30% of the company, then you should be very sure that the next round at which you will raise the money should be at least 12 to 18 months away. Raise money for a cash burn of minimum 18 months. Otherwise, you will keep on rushing after fundraise. When will you give time to your business? You'll keep on rushing for the fundraise. Then competitor analysis. Many times investor is not able to make out what is your business. But if you tell them about your competition, then they are able to make out. So if you are giving the names of your competitors, then you have to also give your competitive advantages, how you are better, how you are different, what is your USP, unique selling proposition. And when you are giving how you are different, then you also give financial projections that for the next 5 years, we will do this much turnover, this much operating profit, this much net profit. We will invest this money, which will go in for raising the business. Then the ask, you have to tell the investor how much funds you are asking, put it in both dollars and rupees, and the use of funds. So suppose you're asking for 5 crores, then how much of that 5 crores will go into marketing, how much for team building, how much for technology development. So you have to give that. Always remember, if you are a consumer company, then the fund guy is happy giving you money for marketing, because he feels that if his money is going into marketing, then the turnover will rise a lot, the company's business will improve a lot. And because the valuation of the companies, they are in multiples of uh, profit and loss, of revenue, of operating profit, of net profit, in multiples of that. So naturally, with each rise in unit of revenue, there will be multiple rise in valuation of the company. So the investor will gain in multiples. His shares will increase in multiples. Then the future roadmap, it means that how many customers you will have in how many years, which all offices you will open, how many team members will you likely be in the next 3 years, 2 years. It's basically a roadmap which captures your whole goal of the company in terms of non-financial numbers. That maybe you would like to launch version 2 of your product, or version 3. So when will that be launched, and so on. Thank you. This is basically what the investor wants to know, and I have broadly covered all the points, and happy to answer any questions which the students here would be having. And also, I would request every one of you to connect with me on LinkedIn, so that in case you have any further questions, you can always ask me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Tushar.